I'm Jorge Ramos.
And I'm Paula Ramos.
And this is The Moment. Paula, we're going to be talking to someone who seems to be in a hurry. For many years, he represented the state of Arizona in the U.S. Congress. And then last year, he did the impossible when everybody was voting for President Trump. And obviously, he won the popular vote. Ruben Gallego beat Kari Lake, who had the support of President Trump. And not only that, now there's speculation that he might be running for president, that he might want to become the first presidente hispano. Why? Because he went to Iowa. So Ruben Gallego seems to be a really interesting person to talk to right now.
And if you think about his strategy, Dad, one of the things that he's doing is that he went from being a self-described progressive, right? Ruben Gallego is someone that was part of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. But if you notice now from his website to his speeches, he's someone that no longer uses the label progressive when he describes himself. Even if you look at his issues from immigration to LGBTQ rights, Ruben Gallego has taken, I would say, a moderate to right approach. He even is someone that co-sponsored the Laken-Riley Act, which, as you know, is a piece of legislation that even Donald Trump lauded. And so that's one of the questions that we have for him today, right? Is this centrist approach the way forward for Democrats? Or in doing so, are Democrats losing the heart of what has always been the Democratic base?
Okay, so this is what happened. We went all the way, Paula and I, we went all the way to Washington, D.C. We went to the office of Ruben Gallego. And this is the conversation. When we come back, Ruben Gallego at the moment. So, gracias por estar aquí.
Muchas gracias.
Yeah, welcome to The Moment.
Yeah.
Agradezco mucho.
You had a very busy day today, which is now an ordinary day in the Senate in the United States of America. What happened today?
I mean, unfortunately, nothing, to be honest, because we're still in the shutdown mode. And so I met largely with my colleagues today, talking about different type of legislation. But what we're focusing on is making sure that, at the end of the day, we're fighting for 24 million Americans and, affordable health insurance. And, we're trying to figure out what is going on with this on the other end of this, spectrum when it comes to our colleagues. The other thing today is I went and had a kind of a press conference for one of my other colleagues, Adelita Grijalva, who should have been sworn in by now. The election happened 2 weeks ago, and Speaker Johnson's come out with any excuse not to swear her in.
Why do you think he doesn't want to do that?
Because he's protecting the pedophiles on the Epstein list. And she would be the 218th person to sign the discharge petition. And then that would put him in a very precarious situation. Sorry about that. And so I had a press conference to call that out. And that's why I'm wearing the bolo tie, because her father, Raul Grijalva, wore a lot of bolo ties. And in honor of him and of her, I wore it today and spoke out.
So it's symbolic.
Yeah.
It means a lot, no?
Yeah.
But as we speak, it's still the 15th day of a government shutdown.
Correct.
From afar, it doesn't seem like there's any end in sight from afar.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that make you feel? And as you're kind of reflecting on this, do you think this short-term pain is worth it? Will Americans feel that giving no concessions at this point, at the end, is something that is worth it?
The thing that I'm focusing on is because, we're going to pay back all the government workers. They always get paid back. If we don't get this right when it comes to insurance premiums, we're going to permanently affect 24 million people and even more when it comes to health insurance. You're going to have millions of people that just aren't going to sign up again for health insurance. You're going to have other people that are just going to have their premiums doubled. And it may be permanent. Like once we break it, we may not be able to to put it back together. So while there is pain right now, without a doubt, I'm looking out for the grander, bigger idea of what people really are talking about. It's the cost of everything. And now us as policymakers, we're not trying to do it, but Republicans are basically going to add to people's personal problems right now by increasing the cost of healthcare.
One of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you is because you were one of the few Democrats who actually won in the last election. Obviously, Donald Trump, he has tried 3 times to win the White House. But in 2020, something happened. And then in 2024, he got the popular vote. He got the electoral vote. And then you were supposed to lose, but you did not.
Yeah, I don't like losing.
And you won Trump supporters.
Yes.
So what do you do? What was different from the rest of the party?
Well, I mean, I was honest with what was actually happening. look, we won because of two demographics that we kept that they couldn't. Latino working class men and white men. We lost white men. We just didn't lose it by as much as a lot of other people do, white working class men and Latino men. The Democrats should have saw 2020 as a warning sign. By 2022, I heard problems, but we were able to kind of overcome them largely because a lot of the working class men don't vote in off-year elections. But by 2023, and I think you guys have visited me in Phoenix. I live in a working class area. I mean, I was hearing from Latino men despair, right? And for me, growing up working class and with Latino men, I worked construction sites, your restaurants, everything else I could to make money. Latino men always think that they could work themselves out of a problem. If I need more money, I'll just work harder, and
2 jobs, 3 jobs.
Whatever, right? For the first time, I literally felt like despair. They felt like they could not do it anymore. And Democrats, first under Biden and then under the Harris campaign, lied to themselves saying, it's getting better, so everything's going to be fine. But it just wasn't. Like if I went, I would go home and I would see people not fully putting gas in the car. I'd see people at the grocery store taking food off, once they realized they were over their budget. And instead of talking to them and saying hey, I know what you're going through. We're going to work together. I know this feels bad. We tried to put on this happy face and it just didn't connect. And we started from a very strong economic message from day one. And where we recognized that there was a problem, I also, if you look at my first commercial, I specifically say, what the problems are. And I tell them hey, this is not your fault, right? It's our fault. We need to fix this.
But you went against the Trump factor. That's what I mean. But the country went the other way. Right. Even the Latino vote, how it went. It shifted to the
and I think
right.
it was because we were closer to where the voter was. And I think even though Trump wasn't close to where I was, he was closer.
Yeah.
In terms of his economic message than the other side. Even on the immigration side, I mean, his position during the campaign was pretty extreme. Ours was, I think, very, very normal, right? We want border security, we want immigration reform. The messaging on the other side was not at all closer to where the mean voter is, the median voter is. And at some point, they get to vote, whether you like it or not.
I mean, is it that you think that the Democratic Party has been out of touch?
I think that we tailor our campaigns to make ourselves feel good, but not necessarily to win.
What does that mean?
Well, sometimes, for example, I'll give you this good last time go around. Instead of talking about what was really happening in the real lives of people, what they were feeling, saying they can't buy anything, they feel like their American dream is running away from them, they feel frustrated and they're mad about it. Instead of dealing with that, we said things are going to be better. We're going to make things better, right? Or things are getting better. Instead of dealing with the reality, no, inflation is a problem, right? And that was it. On the immigration front, if you had talked to most Latinos, they would have told you they did not like what they were seeing at the border, right? And I heard it from family. These are lifelong Democrats, so they were unhappy about what's happening at the border. They're for immigration reform. They're for sane border security. They're not for the mass roundups that are happening right now. But we didn't want to talk about it. We just wanted to ignore the problem, and hopefully things were it wasn't going to be the top issue that people voted for. At the end of the day, the two top issues people voted for were immigration and immigration enforcement and the economy. Economy first and immigration enforcement. What were Democrats talking a lot about? We're talking about abortion because we feel comfortable talking about that. And we feel comfortable about our stances, but we didn't want to have those other two conversations because it puts us at odds with a lot of people.
Republicans were saying that Democrats were going too far left, right?
On what?
On everything.
Yeah.
On abortion, on the issue of trans people, on the issue of border security.
If you would have talked to a voter...
Do you agree with that?
No, not... Well, on border security and on the economy, yes. If you would have talked to a voter and you would have told them Ruben Gallego is XYZ, the only thing they would have really cared about to talk to me about was where my stance was on the border and what I was talking about the economy. And I think because we spoke only about those two things, when they tried to hit me on trans issues and try to hit me on being too far left on choice, it just didn't stick.
They knew where you were.
They knew where I was. And also they also knew that I really cared about what they really cared about at this point, at this time, which is border security. But
in 2018, I still remember you called yourself real progressive. And then in the last election,
You can use my words against me. Just kidding. No, just joking. Go ahead. Yeah.
They were right, right?
Yeah.
But then you stop using that, not only real progressive, but not even progressive.
Yeah.
So did you change? I mean, did you notice something? You said, if I keep on doing like this, I'll never get
Certainly,
to the
look,
Senate
I'll be honest,
or to the White House.
Listen, whoa. So I stuck that one in. Good. Wow, he's good.
Way too fast.
Wow.
You know we're getting there.
Yeah. I was raised by 4 Latino women, so I'm.
Yeah.
So let's go back.
También, okay?
So let's go back to new
No,
progressive.
but let's, too bad in some regards you do learn and you grow.
Yeah.
In some areas, for example, the country moved. I think my position on immigration is actually and always has been a mainstream progressive position, which is we want immigration reform and we want border security. I think there's been an adaptation of like different policies that just kind of came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't really a full conversation that ever happened with Democrats. Look, I'll be honest. I am progressive in some areas. I'm conservative in some other areas. I'm moderate in some areas, and I'm learning and I'm growing as we go. And some positions are just evolving. And I will publicly have those conversations when it comes to different issues.
Can we define you in a way, or
what?
Can we define you in
I'm sure.
no progressive?
You could define
progressive.
me as a winner. I mean, that's one of the most important things Democrats
so
don't do anymore.
Center. You're moving to the center.
In some areas, I am. Yeah. I won't say that in everything area. There's some areas that I feel very hard in truth, but there's some areas where I think Democrats should be moving to the center. That we're not. Like policing is another area when it comes to policing, border security. Those areas that I think we're really not in line. With the middle of the road Democrat or base Democrat, I should say.
And I think that's what's so interesting about you, Senator, that I think for some people it is hard to define you, right? And understanding this evolution. I think some people know, of course, that you're for justice, right? But then you co-sponsor the Lake and Riley Act, which of course requires detention of people that have committed certain crimes without due process. We know that you're for LGBTQ rights, but you have at times been outspoken about, trans kids not
Latinx.
playing in certain. You hate the word Latinx.
I hate the word Latinx.
We know that.
She used it for the title of the book.
I did.
Yeah.
But even this, obviously you're pro-immigration, but you are okay with the idea of criminals being sent to El Salvador.
Yeah.
And so,
with due process,
which hadn't happened in this administration.
So that's why.
Exactly. But I think, so in that sense, is that you moving to the center because you think that's a winning strategy? Or do you genuinely think, for instance, that trans kids should not be playing sports?
Well, I actually think that trans kids should be able to play sports. What I always say is, number one, the federal government shouldn't be involved in this issue at all, right? Because like, how do I know what the rules are in Oregon versus Texas or anything else like that? What I also say is that like we should give at least some understanding to all parents involved, because trans kids to begin with are already under a lot of immense pressure.
Sure.
High suicide rates. Adding the pressure, the politics around it, it's not helpful. There's some parents I think that actually, parents of non-trans kids that understand what's happening. They feel for these kids.
Yeah.
But like there needs to be a balance, and that's why I think like schools in the most comprehensive, compassionate way need to figure out a solution that allows these kids and his families, trans kids and families, to still participate in sports and activities or anything else like that. And at the same time, there's some balance for everybody as a whole, and do it in a way that's not hyper politicized, because that's what happens, and like it really hurts all these kids in general. Latinx is, that was for me, it just made no sense, and it just came from again, more from my working class background. Like, I heard family members and friends say, "¿Qué es Latinx?" And I'm like, I don't know, guys. I
think it was just perhaps some people thought that it was very simply just a more inclusive way of referring to it.
Yeah, and I think that's also fine. Like if someone comes to me and says like, "Hey, Ruben,
right.
I prefer to be considered Latinx, referred to Latinx by you in your office," that's entirely different, right? Because we're not going to be assholes about this, right? But what I disliked about it was this idea that people can confer something upon my culture, and my language is part of my culture, and I just think like it's kind of off-putting. But again,
in your office, nobody uses that term, no?
They can't use it.
They cannot use it unless someone asks.
They cannot.
They cannot. Unless there's someone comes and says, "We represent like Latino X students of America."
Okay.
Then of course, we use that.
I guess what I'm wondering is if you're a trans person in this country, or you are, an undocumented immigrant, and you're looking at the Democratic Party, is there room for them?
Yeah, absolutely. There's room for them. And there's always been room for them. We may not be 100% perfect, but we're certainly better than those assholes. And so like maybe we're not going to be, great, but like, I'm talking to some of my LGBT friends, for example, after they were disappointing me on one of my comments, I'm like, look, when the trans community needed protection from getting discrimination when it comes to housing, education, when it comes to getting kicked out of the military, like I've stood with them every step of the way. I think what we just need to understand is that like some of this stuff is difficult.
It is.
It's just difficult. And we're not going to be able to have right answers right away. It doesn't mean that we don't want to get to the answer. It doesn't mean that we don't want to figure out a way to be able to be respectful of each other and get to that position. But you have to give some breathing room, not to us politicians, because we're whatever, but a lot of people, the public, like they need a little more time. And I think they'll get there. It's just that, sometimes, the demand signals don't really meet what's happening out there.
So let me ask you about immigration. I wonder if your position has changed. I still remember for decades, since 1986, Democrats were always defending immigration reform. And that clearly meant legalizing first 9, 10, maybe 14 million undocumented immigrants. I don't know what are the numbers. I saw it from Pew.
It changes all the time.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to Republicans, they're saying 15, 20 million.
I've heard 30 million,
I don't think so. I think it's closer to 14 million. So you are for a pathway to citizenship for the dreamers. But what happens to the rest, to the other 14 million who are here?
I mean, I think, look, if we can get a deal that also gets to them, great. If not, though, we shouldn't leave them unprotected, right? And so I think the one thing that we've messed up is that it's been all or nothing, and then we left 14 million people, that number you throw out, at the deportation table. And so for me, like if we want to negotiate and there's a way for us to get people, their pathway to citizenship, fine. If we can do it with dreamers, and for example, I also think the spouses and children of U.S. citizens should also be included, then let's do that. And then give everyone else legal permanent residency, whatever it takes. The all or nothing measures that we've taken has gotten us to nothing.
You think that's the wrong approach?
It's just been the wrong approach. I also think we should have been taking, and this is all retrospect. Like if you would ask me like 10 years ago, I said, no, this is the right approach. I also think that we should have been biting off pieces of the apple the whole time. Like maybe do visas here, then do this and this.
Not the whole enchilada.
Piecemeal
because
approach,
exactly. Because the thing, it's easier for them to demonize the whole enchilada. If we start getting people and Republicans used to voting for smaller immigration bills, then they know that this is not going to be the end of the world, right? Then they know that this is going to.
There was a time when Republicans were in favor of,
absolutely
of doing this.
And
we shifted so much.
Yeah. And look, there are conversations happening. I have conversations with some Republican colleagues about potentially some compromise, but if that gets to a point that is real, we may not get everything we want. But the most important thing is we may end up protecting millions and millions of people from
But nobody's talking about that, no.
Yeah, and I guess my question is like, when is the time, right? I mean, if you look at the border, it's so quiet and it's plummeted.
The question is, when is the time
for having these discussions about comprehensive immigration reform, right? Like when
I think
is
we should
the right
talk about
time?
the whole time. So I mean, I'm having.
But maybe Democrats just gave up on that.
What's that?
Maybe Democrats gave up on that. No, I mean,
no, instead the Democrats gave it up.
None of you are talking about. Yeah,
we have.
You're not talking about that anymore.
Well, I mean, I talk about the need for us to have border security immigration reform, and I am having conversations talking with Republicans. But right now, where the public is, and what they're talking about is inflation, costs of everything. I do think like we messed up, and I say we Democrats messed up when we had the trifecta and we didn't push this and didn't get this done.
Obama could have done it.
Obama could have done it.
8 months, they had supermajority.
Yeah.
The White House,
Biden could have done it. We should have broken the filibuster to pass immigration reform. We are at fault for this too, without a doubt.
And voters are disappointed. Latino voters are disappointed because you've been promising this over and over again.
And the economy sucks. Right?
Yeah.
So we don't deliver in one end, and then the economy sucks, right? So it's just like, and I mean, I heard the other opposite of this, which is, why are those people that are crossing the border getting work permits and, mi abuelita no tiene nada?
There's a lot of resentment everywhere.
Yeah, claro.
And then you have someone like Governor Pritzker of Illinois that's calling out Democrats and saying that Democrats aren't doing enough, that they're not calling out these ICE raids in a louder way.
I mean, I guess we could keep. Well, I mean, I think we are, and we should continue doing that.
Okay.
Not just the ICE raids, the racial profiling that's
Were you
happening.
surprised by that, by the sort of the way in which this administration is carrying out these ICE raids? Was that surprising? Were you expecting that?
I think I was surprised more that they were going to engage in racial profiling, because I think they were very proud of the fact that they won Latinos, more Latinos than normal. You know, and for us from Arizona, the quickest way to piss off moderate Latinos who are, you know, pro public safety, pro immigration reform is the kind of racial profiling that's happening.
That's such a part of your history.
Yeah, it's terrifying. You know, I have family that actually live in Chicago, and they're afraid, right? And, you know, my family's born here. My godson, my goddaughter, daughters, and godsons are all there. And like, it's, you know, they're scared, right? And they had an opportunity to kind of lock up, or at least bring in like Latino male support for quite a while. And now they're losing it because they're doing racial profiling. They're separating families. They're deporting people that have no criminal history, and the economy sucks.
Let me ask you about your military service. You were in Iraq, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then recently you said that Pete Hegseth was one of the worst secretaries of defense this country has had.
Yeah,
Because?
because he's an idiot. He doesn't really have a real understanding of what the military is supposed to do. He accuses the Department of Defense and military being part of the culture war. He is actually bringing the culture war to the military, right? The military and the DOD had a very clear principle, right? Prepare for a rising China, right? The person that's most likely going to engage first with a Chinese issue isn't going to be some buff guy that does a bunch of pull-ups. It's going to be someone behind a screen, right? Someone that's going to be able to analyze something that's happening, or make an order, or fly a drone. And that person can be anybody. That person can be as smart as they want to be. They could be black, white, Latino, they could be gay, they could be trans. And instead, we're just pushing out some of the best and brightest people in the world. We're politicizing our generals. And in order for you to be a good general, you have to be good with Donald Trump, not necessarily good for this country. And that's what makes us that's what makes him both dangerous, dumb, and inefficient.
You wrote a book when you were in Iraq.
Yeah. No one read it, but yes, I wrote it.
You think? Yeah, nobody.
I think it's a couple thousand, right?
Well, but your experience was
right. It's not a happy book. It's a book about what really happens in war.
That you were the lucky ones.
Yeah.
Right. So, talking about Pete Hegseth, he said that soldiers are individuals who kill people and break things. Do you ever see yourself as that?
I mean, I've had to do that for war. But I don't
kill people.
But I didn't want to do that. I always looked at myself as somebody that was there to defend my Marines, uphold the honor of the Marine Corps, the Constitution of the United States, and effectively, be a good representative of this country. I think this idea that we're all just a bunch of warriors ready to kill and break things is not reflective of what real warfare is. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes that is what a mission calls for, but sometimes it's not. And when you're training men and women to just be these like Autobots and just do whatever the military trains you to do, you're going to have some bad outcomes. Bad outcomes in the sense, like, number one, they'll end up treating civilians horribly who are innocent in this whole process. And number two, again, sometimes that's not what's needed. Sometimes the best thing you could do is actually just be a good person, right? And my whole time in Iraq was awful. I mean, I lost my best friend. I lost a lot of people. I lost even who I was.
How many years were you there?
I was just there for 7 months. We lost, 23 Marines. The one thing I'm very proud of is that, like, I did my job. I did my job with honor, and I treated the civilians with respect and the dignity that they deserved. And whatever I had to do at the moment to survive, or to make sure other people survive, I did it because it was called for, not because I wanted to have some exertion of power, right, to show.
But I'm sure that affects you. I mean, even when you're talking about it right now.
So of course,
you change your demeanor completely.
Yeah, I'm not the same person that I was before I left the war.
How did it change you?
It's just hard to describe. I mean, I'm, one of the things that will always be with me is just the grief I carry, for the men that I lost, the best friends. And, that changes you. Changes you at, I was 25, and I was there with boys that were 18, 19. And, wars are a horrible thing, which, when talking about Donald Trump and like Pete Hegseth, the way they think about us is also really annoying, right? I get it that we are supposed to be trained warriors, but there are consequences to even treating, telling a Marine or a soldier, like, do what you want, break what you want.
Yeah.
If you don't think that doesn't affect these men and women when they come back home, knowing that they followed orders, but you're still human. You're still doing something to another human being. That's going to affect them for the rest of their lives.
What is the worst case scenario of that? Like, what worries you the most?
What worries me is that, look, I've been in those situations. I've had 18, 19-year-old boys extremely scared. People are yelling at them. Bodies are on the ground. You have fire coming in. You have people shooting at you, chaos. And, all it takes is, some officer giving this person an excuse to do something that's, shoot a civilian, innocent civilian, or do something that is, will cause mass casualties for innocent people. That that young man or young woman's going to carry that for the rest of their lives. And it's not fair because these guys, Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, they think of them as just toys, when in fact they're people, and they're going to deal with this for the rest of life. And you could do it without doing that. You could effectively fight a war without, being what these guys want us to be.
I want to ask you about another military operation. As a Colombian American senator, do you think that the U.S. should develop an operation to get rid of Nicolás Maduro from Venezuela?
No, I think like our history of doing that in Latin America, around the world, has always backfired. I think we could do everything we can on the civilian side to put pressure for there to be change, including, cut a deal, get them out there.
No operation, no surgical operations.
No surgical operations, no military coup done by our special forces. Number one, I'm not sure it'll be successful. Number two, the way that warfare works right now, it's not that we're going to be able to just take this over and do it easily. Venezuela has the capability to hurt us. And I'm not sure some of these guys that are making these decisions understand that. It'll also put us in a horrible position in Latin America. I actually think it'll end up destabilizing that whole region. Now you have a lot of former soldiers, they're going to have a lot of weapons in some pretty lawless areas.
And strong opposition from Latin American countries. Yeah.
But also like what happens when, some of these generals go and work for their narcos now, and they have a huge swath of land between Venezuela and Colombia. How are we going to extract that? There is no good outcome except for a peaceful transfer of power that is led by the Venezuelans.
Shifting gears a little bit, we've seen you in Iowa. Everyone knows that going to Iowa could mean one or two things. Have you given any thought about potentially running in 2028?
I mean, any politician that tells you they haven't thought about it is lying, right? Because we're all self-centered enough to believe that we could do it. Have I thought about it? Sure. Have I made decisions? No. What I'm focusing on, I mean, is, Senate, but also like 3 little kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, by the time 2028 rolls around, maybe more, right?
But walk us through that thought process. Like, what are you weighing? I mean, it's obviously so much pressure, but like, what's going on in your mind?
I'm not weighing it that much. No, it's just like seeing the world and seeing what people are doing. I'm at this point though, I'm like really just focusing on the kiddos and Senate. Like, there's plenty of time to think about everything else, but that's not what I'm thinking about right now.
Okay.
So
great answer.
I'm thinking there's a phrase.
Record that so I can use it again.
there's a phrase that people use in Spanish.
Es un dicho.
Es un dicho que dice, político que respira, aspira. So help me with the translation.
The politician that breathes is aspires.
Yeah.
Aspires.
Yeah, everyone.
Yeah.
So I've known many politicians and
you've interviewed some politicians
and all of you.
Yeah.
At some point you want more power, no? So you're thinking about, you might be thinking about it.
I mean, look, right now I'm not, but like, I'm not also going to be like, oh God, this is so far from here. Because like, again, I have to focus on this other stuff.
Okay. So the way to go is for you to go to the center. I still remember when Bill Clinton said that you win elections at the center. Probably not anymore. Now you might be winning elections on the extremes. But you
who knows nowadays? That's a good question.
You had the formula. You won in Arizona, in a red state.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you feel this continuous need to go to the center, while your party, let's say Zoran Mamdani, AOC, Bernie Sanders, they think they really have to go to the other extreme, to the left.
So I disagree with them on that. I think we need to be more authentic than anything else. And I think there's some positions that Zorhan, Sanders, and AOC that are very popular with everybody that we should adopt, and there's some areas who don't. I think the opposite way, they should also think about it, for other people. Like I think the candidate of the future is going to be someone that can talk about, the American dream, people having opportunity to succeed, affordability, and security. Like, if you could mix all those, like, that's the person that's going to win.
Yeah, but the problem, my question is, if they're wrong, I mean, by going that route.
Yeah, I think anyone that thinks they could go to any extreme, left, right, or even moderate extremism. I know that sounds weird.
Both. Do you consider them extreme?
Well, if you call yourself in America a democratic socialist,
but here's the thing:
for many people,
all
it might
of you
be
have won, right? And I think what's fascinating is that you and
Well, I don't think
Bernie
I could win.
Sanders and AOC and Zoran have won Trump supporters.
Yeah, I don't know if I could win in New York City, right? I don't think Zoran or Bernie can win in Arizona.
But if you're a candidate for presidency,
maybe you got to deal with the primary and everything else. Like, who knows? Who knows? I think for me, the most important thing that I've learned is to be your authentic self and just talk about your beliefs as well as you can, authentically you can. Is going to kind of travel further than trying to engage in this left, right, center kind of like calculation. And I saw that during the campaign. People were like, "Oh my God," and I said it over and over again. Most voters don't vote on any of these things, these terms. They vote on who they trust. So what is the thing that they all do is I think they've all built good trust. And I think they're Trump supporters that trust AOC, Zorhan, and Bernie more than some political Democrats or really political Republicans. And they'll look past some certain positions. And we don't, I think that's one thing Democrats need to figure out is how to build trust the voter.
So let me bring up just one more element. So maybe Sanders and AOC and Soran, they might be seen as anti-Trump.
I think they're anti-establishment. That's what actually the thing is that help them out.
But are you anti-Trump?
I am mostly anti-Trump. Yeah. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that or afraid to say that. I mean, God sakes, follow my social media.
I mean,
are there areas that we have alignment with? Sure. But that doesn't exclude or stop me from being critical and or trying to stop him in all the other areas that I think that he's horrible for this country.
You are in many ways the reflection of the American dream, but this is also a time where a majority of Latinos believe that the American dream is dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that it's alive?
I think it's barely hanging on.
Really?
Yeah. Look, I needed the American dream growing up. Growing up poor sucks. It was hard. It was mentally draining, trying to figure out how to keep, help my mom keep the family afloat, how to keep my sanity, how to keep my motivation, working after school, studying at night, competing against, all these other kids that had like a lot of more advantages to me. But I always knew that it was all going to be worth it. Like I knew it because like I saw other people doing it. Like, okay, if I go to college, then I get money, then I could do this, and I can help my family, right? Right now, talking to working class Latinos, immigrants, or just working class people in general, they really feel that the whole system is rigged against them. That even if they work hard, that they're not going to make it. And even worse, they believe that their kids are going to be worse off than they are. Yeah. And like as parents, like you sacrifice everything to bring stability, to bring a future. And you could really care less how bad you're doing as long as you know that your kids are going to be better. Right now, people don't feel that. And a lot of it's because we stopped, and I think Democrats and Republicans just stopped really investing in the stuff that made that possible, right? College being affordable. Yeah. Training programs, housing being affordable. Like we just haven't really like actually tackled these big issues because I think they've kind of gotten worse and worse little by little over time, but it's just draining these people, right? People right now like want to buy a home, like 40-year-old people right now can't buy homes. And then they compare themselves to their parents who bought their homes at 25. Right. They feel like shit, right? And we don't really respond. I mean, I try to, but I think we in general in politics don't really respond to that kind of despair because a lot of people feel like that they've been betrayed.
Let me just finish with this. While doing the homework, I saw your second name, Marine Larena.
Marine Larena.
Can you tell us the story? You never use it.
Well, it's my father's last name, and so my father, my father basically stepped out of my life, when I was in 7th grade, and maybe popped in here and there. In some regards, it's actually good that he left. He's very abusive, physically, mentally abusive to me, to my mom. Horrible role model for me, my 3 sisters. And I think I probably would have been fine with all that until, he was caught selling drugs.
Yeah.
And it was just such a huge dishonor to my family. And I also realized a little, you guys get me a little emotional here. I also realized that him, the person that he is, like all the success I would ever do going to the future, he would try to kind of take claim for it. Like, that's my son, that's my son. But, he had nothing to do with my success. That's my mom, my grandparents, really like the Gallego line of the family. And, coming back from the war, and even thinking during the war, recognizing that everything I had gone through, recognizing everything I was doing to really, say, bring honor back to the family. And when I got back from the war, again, as someone I felt like I was a changed man, I could not imagine a world where everything I had gone through, that he was going to be able to take credit for it. So that's why I changed it. And, I am proud that my family can talk about the work that I'm doing without having to explain that I'm not related to that drug dealer. And, it has certainly, I think, changed a lot of the attitude of my family too, where, we are identified by the work that I do, my mom does, my sisters, they're great people. We have doctors, teachers, business women. We're not identified with that person who really didn't have much of an impact, a positive impact, but always had a negative impact.
Yeah, that's why we call you Senador Gallego.
Así es.
Yeah.
Sí. Thank you, Senador.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Thank
the
you.
conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got tears out of me at the end, man. That's
no,
not fair.
No, but
No,
it was so
yeah.
so personal.
Thank you for
Gracias.
sharing that.
No,
Yeah.
my
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank-
The Moment is a production of Radio Ambulante Studios in partnership with iHeart's My Cultura podcast network.
Our staff includes Daniel Alarcón, Laura Rojas Aponte, Miguel Santiago Colón, and Lisa Cerda, with the help from Paola Leán, Diego Corso, Natalia Ramírez, and Elsa Liliano Ulloa. The CEO of Radio Ambulante Studios is Carolina Guerrero.
Executive producers at iHeart are Arlene Santana and Leo Gomez. Pablo Cabrera and Dylan Unger also serve as producers.
Sound design, final mix, and theme songs by Elias Gonzalez. If you like this episode, share the word.
Recommend The Moment to anyone who might enjoy unpacking these complicated times with us. If you like The Moment, pero también te gustan podcasts en español, check out Radio Ambulante Studios. Their shows, Radio Ambulante, El Hilo, and Central, are really worth a listen.
I'm Jorge Ramos.
And I'm Paula Ramos.
Thanks for listening.